wake up in the morning, the bank's fine, but somebody gets nervous and they run down and take all their money out. Somebody sees them and go, "What are you doing?" So, "I'm getting my money out of this bank." "Okay, I better get my money out too." And everyone's like, "I don't want to be the last one out." Next thing you know, there's a line around the block. And by the end of the day, the bank shuts its doors and they're bankrupt.
Hey guys, welcome back to Library of Wealth. Today we have Jim Rickards giving us his take on the current market and what we can expect in the crash that's just around the corner. Rickards will also walk us through the current state of uncertainty we're seeing, as well as the role the Fed has played in recent weeks that's leading to the biggest inflationary environment in history. He'll talk about why he believes we've been in a depression since 2007 and what effect this will have on the economy and the stock and crypto market up until the end of the year. Let's check out this interview with Jim Rickards, where he discusses his prediction for the crash that will shake the financial market and why he believes power is changing from the fiat money world and what effect the massive amount of inflation is having on our currency. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoy the content we do here on this channel. Let's get right into the video.
A story spread. People believed it. People acted on it. And that's the key. Do you act on the story? You can make the thing you're worried about come true, even though it wasn't true when the story started. And by the way, that actually happened in the 1930s, but there was no social media. And then he had, some great narratives about the first half of the Great Depression, 29 to 32. Yeah, unemployment was high and output was down and it was bad. Banks were shutting, but not everybody was unemployed. Not every business was shut. But if you had a job or you had a business or you had money or you were wealthy, it was bad form to spend it. It was like, well, my neighbor's laid off or my friend's business is shut. I don't want to be out buying a new car right now. It looks bad. But then when Roosevelt was elected in 32 was the election, but 33 is sworn in, it flipped. It was like, hey, happy days are here again and go out and spend the money. And the economy actually grew between 33 and 36. The Fed screwed it up again at 37, but it grew and the stock market went up from 33 to 36 in the middle of the Great Depression. But his point was the narrative that it was bad form to spend money or you better go spend money, two opposite narratives, but a flip from one to the other, but they both drove the economy. Nothing would have been better in 1930 than for people to go spend money, because that would have increased aggregate demand. So that's a classic case study. So I kind of knew a lot of that, but what I learned is that narratives can be true, often they are, but they can be false. In other words, a completely false narrative can be extremely powerful if enough people buy into it. And that's what I'm saying about the Fed pivot. The Fed pivot is a narrative, and it went like this. So inflation takes everyone by surprise in last fall, late 2021. November 2021, Jay Powell says, time to retire the word narrative. He actually said that in transitory. He said, time to retire the word transitory. I think he said that in some congressional testimony. And then inflation goes to the roof, January, February, March, April. The stock market goes down. NASDAQ started going down actually in last November. Dow, S&P started to go down in January, and we're in a bear market by June. It's still going down.
Rickards goes on to say what he thinks about what's going to replace the US dollar as the world's reserve currency and why, because of the infrastructure, China and Russia's current monetary system cannot. Rickards also believes that the global crisis we're seeing now is just a preview of what's to come in the months leading up to 2023, where we'll see the largest financial collapse in history.
But then after the Fed raised rates in March, May, and June, and then the yield curves inverted, and some people weren't looking at them, but some people were. The narrative is like, well, wait a second. The yield curve inversion is telling us that rates are going to be lower 6 months from now. Inflation's cooling off a little bit, and it has. The price of gas has come down a little bit. And so they're going to have to cut rates. That was the pivot. They're going to have to cut rates in January, February, and rate cuts are good for stocks, so buy stocks. So then it's like, but then we get this rally in July and August, and the stock market's, recovering a lot of this, not all the lost ground, by the way, but a lot of it in the stock market's rally, all based on the Fed pivot narrative, which I never bought into. I mean, you don't want to stand in front of a moving train. I wasn't going to short the S&P, but I did not buy into the narrative. I said for two reasons. Number one, inflation came down from 9 to 8. Well, that's nice, but you say you want to get it to 2. you're a long
Yeah.
way from two. And how much demand destruction, how many rate hikes, how much do you have to do to really destroy the economy to get inflation down to two? The answer is a lot. And tell me why that's good for stocks. And it's not.
Right.
But the other reason is, and this is a little more sophisticated analytically, but just because the yield curves are telling you that market pros think rates are going to be lower, it doesn't mean the Fed's going to cut. I mean, that is the message, but it doesn't mean the Fed's going to get the message. How many times does the Fed get things right? The answer is never. And of course, this call comes to a head, I think, August 26th at Jay Powell's Jackson Hole speech. I've never heard a Fed chairman, been following this a long time, never heard a Fed chairman use the word pain twice in the same paragraph, but he said, this is going to cause pain, it's going to be very painful. So that kind of burst the bubble of the pivot narrative. And then the stock market goes down, I think 6 straight days. They get a little, so what's going on now? I don't know. Maybe a little short covering, maybe, you know, the buy the dips crowd have not gone away. They're still around. I'll say talking heads, I guess I'm one, but you know, the cheerleaders, I'll put it that way. The Wall Street cheerleaders have never gone away. The Wall Street always wants to sell you something. The people who think the Fed knows what they're doing, there's some of those, and the buy the dips crowd. So yeah, okay, but the fundamentals have not changed. The recession is here, or if we get a little breathing room, it's going to go down really hard this winter. All the problems we talked about, and most importantly, Jay Powell told us. I always say that forecasting the consequences of Fed policy is really difficult, but forecasting Fed policy is the easiest thing in the world because they tell you what they're going to do. Yeah. You just have to listen and know. There's a little, so you need a decoder ring. There's some secret language, and you got to know who they always have a reporter du jour. There's one reporter that they leak to. In the old days, before they did this, there was primary dealer economists, guys like, great guys like Lacey Hahn and, people at Aubrey Lanston and, some of the lesser known primary dealers. The Fed said nothing publicly. They were a black hole, but they would leak it to their favorite primary dealer of the week. And you could kind of front run the Fed legally because they're part of the government for a while. Now they do it through reporters, but right now it's Nick Timiaros of the Wall Street Journal. So if I read it in USA Today, I throw it in the trash. But if Nick Timiaros says 75 basis points, I'm like, okay, 75 basis points. That's easy. But the hard part is what's going to happen as a result of that. And the Fed's thinking maybe hard landing, but not too bumpy. And I'm thinking more like a plane crash. And assuming they do 75 basis points on September 21st, which is my forecast, but like I say, the Fed kind of told us. Now you're at the target rate for Fed funds is now 3%. Well, yeah, sorry, 3.25%, but at the top of the range. But it was 0 on March 1st. So for people to say, oh, 3.25% doesn't sound that high, it was 0 on March 1st, 3.25 percentage points in 8 months or less. That's unbelievable. And they got 2 more meetings this year. And even if, you could say 50 basis points in November, because it's, 3 working days before the election, they don't want to be too, Jay Powell may be Jay Powell may be a Republican, but he's smart enough to know the Fed wishes they could keep out of politics. Now they can't and they don't, but they wish they could. And the last thing he wants to do is 75 basis points 3 days before the election. So 3 working days because they got the weekend in between. So let's just say 50, but you do another 50 in December. I mean, now you're at 4 to 4.25 range in 9 months. Yeah, that's extraordinary.
Well, we already are getting a window into what's coming down the pipeline with housing. I mean, it's obviously the front lines of the economy being the most interest sensitive sector. And I mean, we've seen, 40% decline from the peak in new home sales? I mean, these are breathtaking. And the peak wasn't even a year ago. That's not even year on year. That's like 9 months ago, down 40%. And I always say, if volume precedes price, this is going to get ugly. And that's just the first warning sign. I don't know. I mean, maybe I'm too bearish, but it just seems to me like the Fed is maybe pushed too far already, but they've got to keep going because, as you pointed out, with inflation at 8, sure, it's down a little bit, but that's not a number that anyone's going to view as reasonable.
Right, including starting with the Fed. They say two now. As read one analyst, he said, "Well, maybe we'll just get to three." Well, first of all, Jay Powell's not saying that, and secondly, good luck getting to three without enormous damage. These interest rate hikes do more damage per basis point to bond prices than if they were at a higher level. So far from saying, "Oh, we're low levels, who cares?" It's quite the opposite. At low levels, that's when the damage is done.
Jim Rickards says this is a make or break time for markets around the globe, and the crypto industry at large has too many working parts now to be stopped. Although he does have a slightly different opinion on government regulation, only time will tell. Rickards isn't surprised about those that hold a favorable position with the United States government, especially those that support the dollar as the world reserve currency. He doesn't believe government should be involved and says that the longevity of cryptocurrency is designed to survive without intervention from any governing body, and that includes Bitcoin. What do you think about Jim Rickards' interview on the coming market crash? Comment down below. Don't forget to like and subscribe. This is Library of Wealth. We'll see you in the next video.